Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to you, wherever you are in the world. I am Tigress Osborn. I'm the executive director of NAAFA, the National Association to Advance Fat Acceptance. And welcome to the NAAFA Webinar Series. Our very special guest today is author Alex Gino. But before I bring Alex on, just want to share a little bit, especially for those of you who are brand new to NAAFA. If you've never spent time with us here in the virtual world or out in the real world, NAAFA is a 55-year-old fat rights organization that works towards changing perceptions of fat and ending size discrimination. We do that through education, advocacy, and support, including our campaign for size freedom, which helps try to change laws to make height and weight protected classes under the law, and lots of other programming, especially our virtual event series, including the NAAFA Webinar Series that you have joined us for today. If you want to learn more about our work, you can follow us on social media at NAAFA Official, and you can find us at NAAFA.org, where you can also donate to support our work. We are able to offer this kind of program completely free to the community, to fat folks and all of our friends and loved ones, because of the support of folks like you. So when you give to NAAFA, you help pay our guests, you help pay our interpreters, you help pay our staff, and you help us create this really important fat visibility and fat fun and fat education programming. We are joined today by our friends from Pro Bono ASL. Right now we have Dee interpreting for us, and we'll be joined later by Nathanael. Please do also support the work of Pro Bono ASL. They're important partners for us and for many, many organizations in creating more accessible events online and in person all over the country. So with that said, I'd like to get you talking to our guests, or get me talking to our guests and you listening to our guests. Some of you may know that this week, in addition to being Weight Stigma Awareness Week, is also Banned Books Week. And we have with us today one of the writers for young folks who is currently one of the most banned writers in the country. We're going to talk about that just a little bit, but we're also going to get to some of the other things that Alex never gets to talk about other aspects of their work. But Alex Gino is here with us today. Alex writes queer and progressive middle grade novels, including the Stonewall and Lambda award-winning Melissa. They love glitter, ice cream. I almost read that as glitter ice cream, which would be a whole different thing, Alex. They love glitter, ice cream, gardening, wordplay, stories that reflect the complexity of being alive, and they would take a quiet coffee date with a friend over a loud and crowded party any day. Alex grew up on Staten Island, New York, where they started telling stories before they could hold a pencil. After 13 years in Oakland, California, they now live in Western Massachusetts with Thunder the Wonder Cat. They are excited to continue to write stories for and about young LGBTQIA plus people. At least that's the plan. Writing is hard. Find more information at alexgino.com or follow them on Blue Sky at Alex Gino. Alex, welcome to the NAAFA Webinar Series.
Hi, I'm excited to be here, excuse me. Hi, Mom. Hi, Amy and Jessica and Carol and other names that I saw, like there and Frankie and Jean Marie. There's like an international presence here. This is fantastic.
It is fantastic. Now, I do want to talk to you about that line in your bio about writing being hard. But for folks who are new to you and your work, I want to make sure we tell a little bit about what you're doing now besides what we just said in your bio and how you got here. What is the origin story of Alex Gino, the writer?
So, when I was young, much like when you were young, Tigress, there were not books with positive representations of LGBT characters for kids. And I went to college, and after college, I was like, you know, the time that I loved reading most in life was when I was about 10. What would it be like to write a story about a queer kid? And I went to the bookstore, and there still was very little. There was like Heather Has Two Mommies for people whose young children who had adult gays in their life. And then there was like I swear, The Truth About Alex, which was a TV movie with Scott Baio, and he was a football player. And, so like the high schoolers, oh my gosh, that could be gay. But around 9, 10, 11 years old is when I feel like I started learning and understanding that I was a person with beliefs that was more than just I like strawberry or I like glitter ice cream, but it's not fair for me to have glitter ice cream when someone else doesn't, and they also like glitter ice cream. Like that's some really meaningful stuff. And so I started writing a book. And as you heard at the end of my bio, writing books was really hard, especially if you've never written one before. You have no idea how to write it. You just keep writing until it's a book. You give up 1,000 times and you pick it up 1,001. And then, so I started writing in 2003, in which the book was not going to be published. And we got to about 2012 when, oh, there's going to be some nice, well-meaning cisgender white lady who's going to write the book for me. Not going to have that, so I had to get the book done. And in fact, there were several books by nice, well-meaning cis ladies who wrote about what it's like to be transgender, which they don't know. That's not very helpful. And from there, I got to write not just a kid who gets to exist as a trans kid, but I got to write kids who have community and queer families and queer loved ones and queer groups at school. And they learn about queer history and we're everywhere.
When how many books do you have now?
5 out.
And when you started the first one and it was hard, and you said, you give up 1,000 times, you start again 1,001. Some people just give up the first or second time. What do you think it was that kept you writing? What kept you going when you didn't know if there was a market for this, or you knew there was a market for this, you didn't know if publishers would believe there was a market for this? What kept you going?
I thought I was gonna make copies that went to like Kinko, that I went to Kinko's and make copies and send them to like flags and stuff. I knew it would get somewhere, but really it was just I would leave it alone for a year or more at a time, and I would remember that it's still not done. And the thing about a book is it will not be done until you finish it. It will just sit there and stare right back at you and not finish itself.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it will kind of tap you on the shoulder, like, hey,
Hi, I'm a
hey.
book. Hi, I'm a book. Yeah, it's I did get definite help along the way. In fact, Jean Marie, who's on the call now, was one of the first people to see it, and she's an editor, and she looked at it and she was like, uh, let's make this happen. And she took what was a very simple draft from someone who didn't know what they were doing, and she, on page 1, she said, okay, do this, do this, do this, don't do this, do this. Page 2. Okay, that thing that you did on page 1, do it again here. That thing you didn't do on page 1, do it here instead. And this, and this. And like she just took me through and showed me for a couple of pages of what editing means. Because editing is not spelling and vocabulary. Editing is what's the story, what's included, what isn't included, how much of the stuff do you carve away, and that took years. And I do feel like I'm better at it now, but it's not like I know what I'm doing. I just know better when I'm failing.
So, how different is the Melissa we know from the Melissa that you first wrote?
Well, starting from the title, because I called it Girl George when I was working on it, because that was very funny at the time, right? Girl George, Boy George. Children don't know about that. Uh, and I
Alex,
didn't.
we're old enough that some adults don't know about that.
I was with 2 adults over 40 who didn't know the facts of life the other day. I lost it. Um,
And
now
if there
you're
are
not
any
gonna know them either.
adults who, if there are any adults who are with us who don't know, Boy George was a very popular singer in the 80s. Who was the lead singer of a group called the Culture Club. And you should just Google Boy George and find some videos.
Yeah, because he's very flamboyant. And so I thought it was cute. And they were like, no, so let's not do that. They don't know that. And the word girl might keep some adults from showing it to a boy. Not that boys won't read it, but adults will be gatekeepers like they often are. And so it was um, I will apologize, everyone. I will tell everyone I am sick. I have a cold. I am underwater, and my brain just lost my thought completely. So, Tigress, do you want to ask another question?
Sure. Well, I'll put you back on track there. We
Or
were talking
re-ask it,
about
please?
the book being called George,
Oh.
and what's but we know it as Melissa. So what happened there?
So it got published, and I will say that in 2015, the trans community hadn't fully come up with the word and concept of dead naming yet. the idea that someone should be called by who they are was still taking hold. And so for the idea for a kid, it just didn't quite click with me or any of the other trans people I knew to be like, oh, wait, that's a problem. And then I was holding the finished book and I went, oh, that's what everyone's going to call her. People who read the book might know better, but people who don't read the book are going to end up calling her something that she doesn't want to be called. And she is fake, but it is implying that it's okay to call someone by the wrong name. And so I talked to my editor and he was like, yeah, welcome to publishing. And then I talked to my editor again during the pandemic when nothing mattered anymore. Uh, and they realized like it was still going to be wrong, and it was going to be wronger and wronger and wronger. And so we changed it. They changed it, and they did a very good job.
And so like I have a copy now that just it's called Melissa. What happened for people who already had a copy named George? Because I think this is really unique in publishing. So I want people to know this story.
Well, they made a thing that you could print out, a piece of paper that you could print out with had the front and the spine done as Melissa. And I thought to myself, that's great, but why isn't it a sticker? And so I got a bunch of stickers made. And I ran out of the first run at 2,500 stickers I think I made originally to cut it low. And I ran out within about 6 months, and I made more, and I just still every couple of months send out again replacement stickers to fix the title.
And so if you are somebody out there who still has a book that has the dead name of this character, you can get a sticker still.
Yep, you go to alexgino.com and you go to the link for, where it says books, go to Melissa, and right at the top of it is like, if you have an old copy, blah blah blah. Yep, and I promise you I will not get out to them. I will not get to them very quickly, but I will get to them.
So for folks who haven't read the book yet, just tell us a little bit more about the story of this first book and then how those themes that you worked with in this book carry through to your other books.
Sure. So Melissa is a girl that no one else knows is a girl at the beginning of the book. She wants to play Charlotte in her school's play of Charlotte's Web, and she kind of sees that as like the way to tell people. And so she tells her best friend, and her best friend is really loving and helpful, and they hijinks it. And I mean, it's a bit of a spoiler, but the book's been out 9 years ago, so I'm very sorry. She gets to be Charlotte on stage, yay! And her mom goes, ah! And her brother goes, oh, and like everyone has different reactions that might not be the reactions that she was expecting. Like some people do better than she was expecting, and some people do not do as well as she was expecting. And she gets to exist. And the fact that that was an accomplishment kind of a little bit broke my heart. She's the only trans kid in the book. There is another queer in the book. The principal is queer, but not like on page queer, just quote coded as a butch Latina lesbian dyke. But from there, it's like I'm not gonna have my kids live alone anymore. I'm gonna have my kids in community. And so my second book actually doesn't have a lot of queer content because in 2015 when they were like, would you like to write another book? I was like, oh, you're gonna give me that kind of power? So I went and wrote a book about a white hearing kid who has deaf and black friends and makes mistakes and has to learn to recover. And people don't like that book as much because it's a lot harder to read because you don't come out of it going, oh, you come out of it going, good. And then from there, I wrote Rick, which is a book about a kid who thinks maybe they're ace because they're just not really on any of it right now. And that kid finds the rainbow spectrum where Melissa already is because people wanted a sequel to Melissa because they wanted to know Melissa was doing well. The sequel to Melissa would be Melissa's transition, which is private as heck and not something that I want to show a whole cis audience of all of that stuff. And my audience is largely cis because the world is largely cis. And it's like that's not what we need. We need to know that Melissa's too happy to have another book about her. because a book requires conflict. And I don't want Melissa to ever have that much conflict again.
I love that for her. I love that for her. So who was the reader you had in mind when you wrote the book was kind of kid you, right?
Kinda, yeah.
Who's the reader you actually got?
So many readers. I've gotten trans kids is fantastic. I've gotten trans adults where like I transitioned at 50 and I found this book and like what if I had had that book at 6? Um, I've gotten letters from people who have a queer kid, a trans kid or a trans grandkid, and they're like, I need to apologize to them, or I've learned something about how to do this differently. And uh cis, like all the people, like everyone loves the book, and that's not everyone, like, but like there's been such a wide range. When I thought I was gonna get it to the kids who really needed it, like that's simplistic. In fact, the kids who really need it need everyone to have read the book. Not everyone, but like it needs to be in the larger picture. It needs to be cis people reading books with trans people in it, so that when they meet trans people, it's not weird thing. It's like, oh right, like Melissa, and she threw up in the bully. Oh my god, that was so funny, and like it's not a big deal anymore.
Yeah. One of the things we know is often a pattern with, I think, all media, but especially with protagonists in kids books is that you it can get treated like the issue book all the time and
My
not like
book is so important, Tigress. Do you
but
know
it
what
gets
gets a kid not to read a book? Tell them it's important.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, and kids love this. Middle grade readers are going to love this book because they're going to love this character, right? So even, we know that kids can go for books that they think will be most like them. And part of what a really talented young, author for young people does, any author really is, get people to see how this person is like you, even if you didn't think they were, right? But sometimes we are of Alex and I are of similar vintage, y'all, and so have a lot of 80s references in common, as you've already heard a little bit. But we get this sort of approach that's like the after school special approach, right? This is the trans book, right? And that's important because we need Melissa as a book and as a character, right? But now you are also getting to write the book where there's the trans kid or there's the rainbow kid of whatever letter, but that's not the heart of the story.
Right.
And
It is
we
relevant
those
to the
two.
story. It influences the story, but it isn't the story. Because it isn't always the story. That is kind of a simplistic and boring story. Kid gets to exist.
Right. Well, and something that we have then in common there, as an organization that is all about changing perceptions of fat, is that the same pattern happens in middle grade books for about fat characters as well, right? That like you're either the protagonist who is the fat kid being bullied, or you're the protagonist who's the fat kid who's the bully, or you're not the protagonist, you're the sidekick, right? And the literary world is changing, and we are starting to see more fat characters. How
We
do you
are
see that in
starting to
your work?
s- we do. We are starting to see more fat characters, but I will say fat is still such a stand-in for lazy and bad guy and the one who's not going to make it in children's literature. I think even more than in adult stuff. I think it's real bad. I think it's real lazy writing, and I see it a lot. I see it an awful lot in books that are otherwise great. Then they'll be like, that's just a side comment about blah 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 who couldn't contain their mouth or some like weird fucking terrible thing. What I did, can I take this opportunity now to do a
Yes.
little reading
Now's
thing?
a yes, now's a
So in
great time.
my first book, I was like, the word fat's going to be in my first book. There are fat people in this book. I'm going to put a fat person in the writing of the book. The first time I wrote it, my editor said, could we change this to be heavy set to be less offensive? And I said, she is not a chair, so no. And I worked with about half a dozen people, people from Nolus and people that I knew in the Bay Area, to be like, okay, how can I write this so it cannot be questioned? And I don't know that I've worked on any sentence more than the sentence in this paragraph. I hope I don't want to always have to think about that hard about using the word fat, but the first time I did it, I wanted it to not be a problem. So here is Melissa, who within the book is called George because people don't know. And I do feel good about leaving it that way because it leaves a whole lot of discomfort in people. And I want them to feel that discomfort. That is very trans, and go ahead, get used to it. Um, so she has just gotten into a fight. And like I spoiled for you, she literally did just throw up on the bully because I wanted her to get back at the bully in a way that could not be her fault. Her body violently reacted to it, threw up all over her. So George had never been in the principal's office before and was surprised by how bright it was. Orange curtains framed windows that reached nearly to the ceiling, and piles of books were stacked around the room. Principal Maldonado sat at a large desk in the center of the room and invited Mom and George to sit across from her in two brown cushioned chairs. The principal had short hair and wore a turquoise necklace over a black turtleneck. She was a fat woman whose broad shoulders filled her chair with an easy self-confidence. And just to get back at my editor, I had to make sure to include the chair in it. So I'm like, if we're going to talk about heavy set, like a chair is heavy set. But no, she fills her chair. And I felt like that was an embodied way and a positive, like reclaimed way to talk about fatness.
Well, and for folks who are with us who are new, or folks who are watching this later on YouTube that are new, you know, you can tell that we use the word fat all the time. It's in the very name of our organization. But the reason that we do that is to help destigmatize the word, to treat it the way that you did in that passage, where it's just part of describing what somebody
Right.
is.
But I knew if I didn't do it carefully, it would be read as coded as an insult, and that the principal would be coded as someone you're not supposed to like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, do people like the principal? Do you hear feedback about this character?
Um, Sometimes, especially from queer people, they're like, as I do sometimes, is principal my yup, yup.
Mhm.
She's a huge dyke. Um,
Do you do you have thoughts on how you have changed, or your readers have changed, or the publishing industry has changed since that first time when it was so hard to write fat into the book? Is it easier now, a few, years later?
um, I think so. I think so. I think you know what? It has to be because I will show you the cover of my latest book. This is Green. Green's a chubby little kid, right? And Alice Austin also has a fat kid. Like, look at that kid. Oh, you got it right there too. Like, that is a kid, that is a fat kid in stretch pants. All right? Like, I don't know that they would have done the cover on the first book like that.
Mm.
I don't know, but yeah.
I think the first thing of yours I read after Melissa was a short story that's in an anthology about fat bodies. Will you talk about that a little bit and what it was like to be part of the
Absolutely.
project?
I could have had them ready, but no. Everybody Shines is middle grade and YA, and it's just all fat fiction stories. And I wrote a story about a kid who was getting their new cat after their last cat had passed away. Because there's lots of situations in which uh, you read the story about the pet dying, but what about after that? What about the next pet? How do you do that? And it's called The Perkle of Life, and it's very cute. And it's just exciting to have that. And within a couple of years of that, within like a year or two, also the other F word came out, which this is nonfiction stories. And this is talking about like nonfiction talking about bodies. It's beautiful. And I got to write a story in it called it's not a story, but an essay in it called Body Sovereignty. This fat trans flesh is mine. And I got to talk about how, as a fat person, I'm told to change my body. As a trans person, I'm told not to change my body. And for years, I was like, what the heck is that? And it's about sovereignty. It's about what they want versus what I want. And I don't want to change my fat body, and I do want to change my trans body, and I get to do both. So yeah, I think definitely with those, with Julie Murphy, with Crystal Maldonado, with Starfish, which I have. Starfish is a book that I don't personally love, but it's a fat character. She deals with a whole lot of fat hatred from her mom in the first half, and it's a rough slog, but it's also a beautiful book. Renee Watson, like there's so many people, there's so many more people now that yeah, there it is changing.
And we're seeing more fat characters in picture books too, for readers and people being read to younger
Oh,
than.
Vashti Harrison's Big came out a couple years ago, and that's one of the most best books I've ever seen.
We are launching a new series, Fat Community Storytime, which is reading to grown-ups, like most of our audience usually is, but with the kid-friendly video version. So if you want to see those authors read their books to, for your kids, you can share it with them, the kids in your life. But we're launching
Awesome.
next month with Hannah Mushabek, who is going to read her book, A Homeland, My
Homeland?
Dreams of Palestine. And that series is, for us, a way to highlight the fat authors and illustrators who are working in the books for littler kids. And
Hannah's one of my dear friends. She's a great person.
well, and whether the protagonists of the stories or not, we want to spotlight some of those
Well, the
authors, like
protagonist,
whether
one
the
of the
books are
protagonists of the
about
story
fat
is her
kids.
as a kid. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's right. In that case it is, yeah. But as so anyway, we have some more content coming for you friends that is related to young readers and and also the kid in all of us who wants to be read to. So that one starts in October. Do you ever write for little kids?
I have tried writing picture books. They're not good. It is really, really hard to write a good picture book, a great picture book. Because you have to, if you're going to write a picture book, it has to be read 1,000 times without the adult wanting to throw the book out the window. That is hard. That is a hard thing to do. And I've tried a couple times and have not yet succeeded.
Well, we love your middle grade books. What do you why is that age your sweet spot? Is it because of that little reader you were at that age, or what is it?
So there's this button I've heard in people's brains that flicks and goes to grown up. Um, and mine didn't. Like there is definitely still part of me that is 10 years old. And that I think that's why. I think that's where it's coming from. Is it's yeah, and I was I think it was I do forget who asked, but there was a I was on a panel of middle grade writers, and there was a middle grade writer in the audience who said, "Okay, so how old are you all actually when you're writing?" And the answers across the board were like 9 to 12. Like it's just yeah.
How often do you get to interact directly with your readers?
Um Less this year than any other year. I have been invited to libraries, to schools, to all sorts of different places. And in the last 2 years, all right, so COVID cut a lot of it. There was a big dip for COVID, and things were starting to come back. And then the book challenges, which we hate, and the book bans, which we hate, are getting bigger and more, and people are getting scared, and they are not inviting queer and trans authors. And I know dozens of other people who are saying, yeah, we're just not getting the calls anymore. So I've gotten to do it, and it's wonderful. And right now it's scary.
Does that make you not want to do it, or does that, like, what does that mean? I hear what that means for the librarians, the teachers, the book clubs, the whatever. What
The
does it mean?
librarians are on the front lines of this, and I feel for them because yes, of course, they're book advocates and they want to be book advocates, but they didn't sign up for that. I knew exactly what I was getting into. Right? I knew people were not going to like my book, and that didn't stop me then. And no, my take on it, and I'm not the only one who thinks this, is that if they are going to attempt to push down my thoughts, I cannot do the same. I have to amplify my thoughts. I have to get louder. I have to get queerer. I have to get fatter.
So
Oh no!
what is your next loud queer fat book?
Oh no, my next book is such a quiet book. My actually the next book that's going to come out next year does not have a lot of queer content, and that's a thing I'm loving to get to do now. I'm like, yes, I'm a queer writer. That doesn't mean all my books have to be queer. Like you were talking about the fat creators for picture books. Not every you yeah, it doesn't have to be in the book to be relevant. And to for me to be different being queer writing it. It is about a kid who is kind of alone for the summer with their younger sister. And they're a one best friend kind of kid. They're a reader kind of kid, so they're not used to being alone and worse, lonely. And yeah, it's just kind of about it's a little bit of coming of age. Real quiet though.
Do you um do you we want to see more representation of fat kids and queer kids in books. We also want to see them in other media. Do you have an interest or a desire or a hope that your books will be turned into other kinds of media, or do you want to stay in the book world?
So many, many, many moons ago, like 9 years ago, I got a movie option for Melissa, and I got a script that was so bad that I effectively kiboshed the deal. They had Melissa taking her mom's hormone pills, and then she collapsed on stage from a hormone overdose. Like it was bad. It was bad. And then we continued
Not
to work. We
in the
tried.
book.
Oh no, it's not just not the bad. It's not just not the book. It's like
Yeah,
what kind of drug seeking peddling maniacs you want to make trans kids out to be.
right.
It so in that having seen that happen, if it could be done well, and there's a play version that was done at Andy's Summer Playhouse, which is a an amazing little space up in New Hampshire where they bring the kids together and the kids really do all of it, like the stage work and the sets and all that stuff. And they made an amazing play that was so sweet to see. Like if it were ever like a musical or something, that'd be awesome. But I don't know that I need to be in movies. I don't trust movies.
I mean, that in some way feels like, well, that means I even more want you to be the one to write the script for the queer kid movie that we need, right? But I know everybody's got a different
Yeah, I tried writing the screenplay is so different because screenplay is just say what's happening all the time. Nothing happens in my books. People think in my books. People have dialogue in my books. Like there's no action to make a screenplay out of.
well, then that does tend to translate well to plays sometimes too, so I can see
Yeah.
how that worked out. um do you hope that people will do that with your other ones? Like, do you like the idea of
Hope is
kids
a funny
theaters
word.
developing it? Okay. Yes.
It's not something that I think about. It's not something that I wanna like. It sounds like it sounds like asking for way too much in the moon. I'm like, ah. But if they wanted to, maybe. Like if they did it with good queer and trans and fat representation, sure, make a screenplay because I can't. That's why I said yes to the people who started with it. I'm like, I don't know how to screenplay, and I'm not learning a whole new skill for that.
Right.
You can screenplay it, but then they did a terrible job.
But then the wrong people screenplayed it. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
I got it. Um, well, do I imagine you get asked this a lot, because I know many writers, especially writers for young people, get asked the sort of like how do you get started? So you just kind of jumped in. You decided you want to wanted to write a book. You just kind of jumped in and winged it. Is that right?
Yep.
So knowing what you know now, is there advice that you would have for new writers? You talked about editing and like learning that process or having help with that process. What else?
Jump in and wing it. So my writing advice is as follows. Writing advice number one: all writing advice is suspect. Do what works. Don't do what doesn't work. Writing advice number two: not all writers write every day. I was told, or not told, I got the sense growing up that if you're a real writer, you write every day. So if I don't write every day, I'm not a real writer. Like, mm-mm. I had mental health, I had existing, I had modern capitalism. Are you kidding me? I'm not writing every day. Write what you like. You do need to write regularly if you want to get better at it, but you don't have to do that. There's no requirement. If you want to do it, then yeah, write. Write and show your writing to people. Not because you'll necessarily do everything they tell you. I didn't do everything Jean Marie said when she told me all the things, but her telling me the thing pointed out where there were things that had to be fixed. Whether I fixed it her way or fixed it a different way, the fact that people were pinging on it said there's something here. When my editor said, hey, should we not use the word fat? I responded with, no, we'll figure out how to use the word fat. But it was a key, it was a clue to, hey, people are going to read this funny. So yeah, it's just right. Oh, and then one thing I do like to say is we read books. So we often think that the first thing to write is a book. Um, Books are really hard, and writing is a craft. And I would recommend that someone learn how to build a birdhouse before they build a mansion, because you can mess up the birdhouse and you won't have spent much time. And it's easier to fix a birdhouse, and the birdhouse doesn't have as many requirements to be structurally sound. Build a couple birdhouses, write short vignettes, write little thingy things, and that will lead to something that you're like, oh, this is a book.
That was true for me as a writer too. That I the idea of vignettes was part of why the House on Mango Street was so important to me as a reader,
Yes.
but also as a writer. Just the idea that like you don't have
Yes.
these like 30-page chapters. You don't have to write the whole book. You can have these just like scenes and moments, and those count for something too. I think
Yeah, I
that's
was big on Margaret Atwood stories. I was like, her books are fine, but her stories are where she gets somewhere fast.
so. Before we start pulling, we got some questions coming in the chat. I have one more question for you from me, which is we've talked a little bit about writing, and we've talked a little bit about the publishing world as related to what kinds of books weren't being published. But how much of your experience in the publishing world has been because of your identities, not because of the story that you wrote, but because you are a queer person, or because you are a fat person, or you know, any of the pieces of you that have made it more challenging or easier or different for you in the world of publishing?
I'm going to say being a trans person made it way easier to write trans characters, because there's a lot of cis people, not a lot, but there are cis people who were, maybe still are, but were trying to do it. And a lot of their books were about how good the people who accepted the trans person were for doing that work.
I can see that.
Made me sick. Um, I think there's also and I'm so glad that we're not really talking much about book bans and challenges. I will tell you, I don't like them. Authors Against Book Bans is a great organization. They work with other organizations, National Coalition Against Censorship, et cetera, et cetera. Um, when a book with a sexual assault is banned, that is fucked up. That is fucked up, and to say that that event that happened to that person is something not to talk about is fucked up. And while comparison games are bad and comparison games are weird, I am where my paying compare I am where I am playing a comparison game. The thing that's so dangerous in my book is me. That just fucking hurts. I hate it a lot. I hate it a lot. And if I were writing about someone else, like it wouldn't be the same way.
Yeah, and if you but did it make it harder for you to get published? You mentioned there were a lot of cis ladies that were getting published with these books. Was it harder for you to get published, or was the authenticity of your book one of the things that helped you, you know, overcome the hurdles of being a trans person dealing with that system?
I think the timing helped a lot with that. Um, because there were other books that were in process, but only one that was released before mine. So it was like all of the places going, oh, something's coming, something's coming. And my agent, who's a fabulous fat queer person, sent my book to David Levithan, who is a gay YA writer in his own right. And he said, basically, he was like, "Hey, I want to be in ground floor on this," and absolutely swept the book up. And I have not had a problem with Scholastic. I will say, for anyone who has heard of Scholastic, there are two Scholastics. There is Scholastic Trade, which publishes books and exists in New York. And then there's Scholastic Fairs and Clubs, which goes to the schools. And I will tell you, they are based in Florida. That's all I'm going to say about them. They are very based in Florida. My books have never appeared in book clubs and book fairs. My books are trade. And it's so interesting, like the nuance of it. There's these two different things. Maybe not interesting to anyone else, but it is to me. I did not have a problem. It went really well. It went really well because of timing. It went really well because the book was already in the condition it was in. But yeah, it went well.
I'm really glad to hear that. And I will tell you, I'm in Arizona and your books are in my local library. So I love that for kids in Arizona. I could not even imagine being when I was a kid being able to find any
No,
at
no.
the library. We have a question from Megan. Megan loves that you usually read your audiobooks and wants to know if you could talk a little bit about what that's like.
Really cool. So the first book, they had a trans woman read it, which was awesome. The second book, they were like, "Oh well, the main character is a girl, so we'll have a woman read it," and that was fine. But then they gave it to me, and I never want to give it back. You sit in a little room with a microphone right here, and you feel kind of like the Beatles. And there's someone in another room like doing this with the little things, and you just read your whole book, my whole book. Um, the downside is that if you slip the slightest thing, you do have to stop and start over. I made the foolish mistake of naming a character Xavier because then every time I said Xavier or Xavier, we had to stop again. We had to stop because I had said Xavier the first freaking time. But on the other hand, I know all the
Name
nuances.
everyone Joe.
Joe, Joe, it's real good. Yeah, I do think about that now while I'm naming them. I'm like, is that going to be hard to say? But when someone else is reading your work, they're they're going to read it with their own cadence. I'm reading with the cadence I wrote it with. So it's right all and nothing sounds awkward because I know how every sentence is supposed to sound. And because I'm in the author, if there's something that's weird in the text, I'm allowed to go, no, that's the mistake. We'll have the print fixed. And I'm allowed to like oversee it and be like, no, that's not what it should be. It's kind of cool. I really love it.
Um,
We usually do it over 2 days. We do like it's like 5 or 6 hours in a day, and then by the point done, and then another 4 or 5 hours the next day.
what are some of your other favorite things about being Alex the writer?
I don't have a regular job. I'm not good at regular jobs. I had a couple in my 20s, and after about a year or two, I'd be tired and want a new job, which is kind of makes sense. I wanted a new book. Um, I am really lucky that I said it as a high schooler. I remember saying, I don't want to be independently wealthy. I just want to be independently middle class. I want to have my time, and it means that I have amazing connections here in Western Massachusetts. I get to, in the past, I've gotten to travel and go places. I got to go to Germany and Netherlands and Sweden once because they brought me for the book, and it's, it's kind of so lucky that I feel guilty about it.
How many languages has Melissa been translated into?
Do you know the answer?
No, I don't.
Um, I think it's 15. It's been the other ones have like we got a couple of French and things, but no, Melissa got translated into 15 different languages. My favorite might be that it got translated into Chinese to sell in Taiwan, but to me, that says they made it to the mainland too.
I love this. Another question that came in from Megan. Um, do you have favorite fan fiction or fan art that kids have made with your characters?
Um, I have a drawer full of like letters and art, and they're so adorable. I think one of the best was a kid who made a graphic novel of Melissa. And it was like a 10-page graphic novel. And I'm like, do you not want to keep this? And no, they wanted to give it to me. I'm like, no, but this is so adorable. You should keep this. And they wouldn't. They gave it to me. I also have a card in my wallet that says official member of the Kelly fan club because a kid at a I went to an event and met a kid and they were like, we're gonna be things of the Kelly fan club. And then I saw them again and they're like, do you have cards yet? And they're like, yeah, but we'll make one. And they pulled their mom's like business card on the back. And so yeah, I carried it around with me. It's adorable.
That is really that is truly adorable.
Though, can I say something about Kelly?
Yes.
I love what I did with Kelly because in Kelly is the helpful best friend. And in Melissa, she's very helpful. But in Rick and in Green, she's still very helpful in times and ways that Melissa doesn't always need. And sometimes Melissa has to go like, shut it down, you're just the ally. Not just the ally, but like, shut it down. This is you're not working in alliance right now. You're speaking over me. And that was really cool to get to do to have all these people who identified so hard with Kelly have to then read, oh, Kelly's imperfect. You can go too far being supportive in ways that don't always see the person you're supporting.
And then many of us have, right?
Oh, I'm not saying I haven't. I've done it too, for sure.
Yeah.
I
Um,
exist.
no, but like such an important element to add to the book and have people and still love Kelly, right? Still have be a
Oh yeah, I
Kelly fan.
still love Kelly. Kelly's
Yeah.
lovely. She's just not perfect.
Um, do we have any other questions from the chat? We have time for one, maybe two other questions if anybody has anything. In the meantime, while I give people a minute to do that, I'll do the recap I usually do at the very end while people are thinking about that. Um,
Recap.
yeah, recap. So once again, Alex, tell folks where to find you if they are interested in more about you and your work.
Ridiculously simple. It's alexgino.com, alexgino.com. I have run away from the dead bird, and I'm currently hanging out on Blue Sky as Alex Gino. I'm a little bit on Facebook as author Alex Gino, but I tried to keep my Facebook for like my friends and things, and it's a little messy. Um, but that's where I am. Go to the bookstore, get the book. Go to the library, get the book.
Do you have
Go online and get the book.
do you have any particular bookstores or libraries that you want to give a shout out to?
Grew up in the New York Public Library, so can't not love them. And there is a children's bookstore in Florence, Massachusetts called High Five Books. And they are the owner there, Lexi Wright, is one of the fiercest advocates for queer youth I've ever experienced. And they're like they have pride signs in the window, and they're always like noting what the new queer and trans literature is. And then they have a little grown-up section, which makes me so happy because that's what they are, the grown-up books. Um, and they're connected with an art organization, Art Always. So there's like art things that happen, art classes that happen in the back of the room. And then yeah, it's a really thoughtful space for the community that it serves.
And one thing that you all can do if you don't realize this is that if your local library does not have a copy of one of Alex's books or all of Alex's books, you can request them. It is good for librarians to know that you want these books, that you want them, that you want kids in your community to have access to them. And many public libraries just have a simple website where you can go and request books to the librarians. So you can absolutely support Alex and other fat authors and other queer authors and other fat and queer authors by doing exactly that. And it looks like we don't have any more questions from the chat, so I'll just go ahead and ask you our final question. We always close with asking folks if there's anything we didn't ask you about today that you really wanted to talk about or that you wish more people would ask you.
That's a lovely question. I mean, you kind of did it by not talking about the banned books very much. I just love when I don't have to talk about that because there's not much more for me to say. Um, I think what I want to just say is thank you to people for being here. Like this is my job. This is what I do. I get royalty checks, I get contracts. Like this is what I do. You're just here because you want to be. You're just doing these things because you want to. And I appreciate that.
Well, we appreciate you being here because, um, lots of people with busy jobs don't have time or don't make time to do these kinds of community events, and especially at the limited budget that the little org that could has. And so we want to express that gratitude to you as well, Alex, and to our audience. I'm so glad that Alex gave you the shout out that you deserve, because we create these community spaces, partly to create educational materials through the interviews with the folks that we have as guests, but also partly for you to be in space together, those of you who are able to join us live for the virtual event. So thank you. I just want to echo Alex and saying thank you for being here. I also want to give a shout out to our friends at No Lose. Alex mentioned No Lose when they were talking about, I think it was when you said some folks who worked with you around language stuff and around how to use the word fat. For folks who don't know, No Lose is another fat community organization that is a queer-centered organization, and you can find out more about them at nolose.org, NOLOSE.org. They are our friends. We support each other's work, so definitely check them out and see what they've got coming up too. And thank you all for being here. Once again, thank you to our interpreters from Pro Bono ASL. Today we had Nathanael and Dee with us. Thank you to Darlene behind the scenes today, and Julianne, who did a lot of the pre-work for this session. And of course, thanks to all our NAAFA supporters. Again, your contributions are what allow us to compensate folks for their time, to produce these webinars, and to keep them free so that everyone of any means can attend them. If you would like to support this work further, you can go to naafa.org/give and make a donation to NAAFA today so that we can keep up the good work. Again, we do have something coming up in October with Hannah, who's going to be doing story hour with us about her book, Homeland, My Father Dreams of Palestine, and many other virtual events coming up for the rest of 2024. So stay tuned. Follow us on your favorite social media at NAAFA Official, and we will see you next time for the NAAFA Webinar Series. Thanks for being with us. Take care, everybody.